I was a college student, living in the hostel with other girls. Life there was noisy but also safe. One day, my boyfriend told me something different. He said, "Why don't you move into my grandfather's old house? It's empty, and you'll have more privacy and peace there." At first, I hesitated. A hostel may be crowded, but at least it was full of people. Still, the idea of having a whole house to myself felt tempting. No strict hostel timings, no sharing rooms, and no warden shouting at us. I could study, relax, and live freely. So after thinking for a while, I agreed. The house was located a little far from the city, in a quiet street where hardly anyone came. When I first entered, I noticed how old it looked. The walls were dusty, and the wooden floor made creaking sounds when I walked. The furniture was covered with white sheets, and the air smelled of something forgotten. It felt like no one had lived there for many years. Still, I told myself that I would get used to it. I unpacked my clothes, cleaned one room, and set up my study table near the window. That evening, when the sun went down, the whole house grew darker than I expected. The lights were dim, and the silence felt heavy. I tried to keep myself busy by reading, but the sound of the wind outside the windows made me uneasy. Sometimes the old doors made cracking noises, and the wooden staircase echoed whenever I walked. I told myself it was just because the house was old. But deep inside, I felt something strange. It was as if the house was waiting for me, silently watching. I didn't know that my decision to stay there would soon change into the scariest experience of my life. The first night in the old house felt very different from the hostel. I was not used to this deep silence. In the hostel, there was always some sound, girls laughing, footsteps in the corridor, or someone talking on the phone. But here, the only thing I could hear was the ticking of the old wall clock. I locked all the doors carefully and lay down on the bed. For some time, everything felt fine. But just as I started to fall asleep, I heard something unusual. It was a soft, slow sound, almost like someone was crying. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, maybe a woman on the street. But when I looked through the window, the street was completely empty. The crying continued, but it sounded very faint, as if it was inside the house. My heart started beating fast. I told myself that maybe I was just imagining things because it was my first night here. To calm myself, I switched on some music on my phone. The sound covered the crying for a while, and slowly I fell asleep. But in the middle of the night, I woke up again. This time the sound was clearer, and I could hear it near the stairs. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make me sit up in fear. I wanted to go check, but I didn't have the courage. I stayed under the blanket, holding my phone tightly in my hand. Minutes felt like hours. Slowly, the sound faded away. The silence returned, but I couldn't sleep anymore. My mind was full of questions. Who was crying? Why here? Was it real or just my imagination? That night, I realized that living in this house might not be as peaceful as I had thought. Something was wrong, and I was only beginning to feel it. The second night in the house was worse than the first. I tried to keep myself busy during the day, cleaning the rooms and arranging my things so I would not feel scared. I even told myself that last night's crying sound was just my imagination. But when evening came, fear slowly returned. After dinner, I sat near the window with my books. The street outside was empty, only a dim street light was glowing far away. The silence in the house was heavy again. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I noticed something move. It was a shadow, dark and tall, passing right outside the window. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly turned to look outside, but there was nothing. The street was still empty, no person, no animal, not even the sound of footsteps. I waited for a while, staring outside, but everything was still. Finally, I forced myself to sit back down and continue reading. But it didn't stop there. Later that night, while I was about to sleep, I saw the same shadow again. This time it was clearer. It looked like someone was standing near the window, watching me. My body froze. I gathered the courage to pull the curtain aside, but the moment I did, the shadow vanished. There was no one there. I tried to convince myself it was just the streetlight playing tricks with my eyes, but deep down I knew it was something else. Every time I turned off the light, I felt the presence again. It was as if the shadow was waiting in the dark, watching my every move. That night, I hardly slept. My eyes kept going back to the window, and my ears kept listening for any sound. The house no longer felt like a place to live, it felt alive, filled with something unseen, something that was slowly coming closer. By the third night, I was no longer comfortable in that house. The strange crying and the moving shadow kept haunting my thoughts. I tried to tell myself that fear was only in my mind, but deep down I knew something was truly wrong. That evening, I prepared food quickly and sat in the living room. The silence was heavy again. Suddenly, I felt a cold breeze pass by me, though all the windows were tightly closed. I touched the glass, it was locked, yet the air inside felt icy. My skin shivered as if an invisible hand had brushed past me. I switched on every light in the house, hoping the brightness would push away my fear. But the opposite happened. In the silence, I began to hear small noises, like light footsteps moving upstairs. When I went to check, no one was there. The rooms were empty, yet the sound followed me as if something unseen was walking along. Later, when I sat back on the bed, I suddenly felt watched. My heart started racing. It was not the feeling of being alone, it was the clear sense that someone was standing nearby, staring at me. I looked around quickly, but the room was empty. Still, the pressure of those invisible eyes was heavy, making it hard to breathe. I tried to distract myself by calling my boyfriend, but the call dropped again and again. The phone signal was strong in the day, but at night it always seemed to fail. It felt as if the house didn't want me to connect with the outside world. That night, I didn't even dare close my eyes. Every time I blinked, I imagined the unseen presence moving closer to me. The air in the room grew colder, and the shadows on the wall seemed to move even though nothing else did. I realized I was no longer just afraid, I was living with something I couldn't see, but it could see me. By the fourth night, I was breaking down. My body was tired from lack of sleep, but fear kept me awake. I wanted to believe the house was only old and noisy, but the things happening were beyond normal. That night, I lay on the bed trying to relax. Just when I closed my eyes, the soft crying returned. But this time it was not faint. It was clear, like someone was crying right outside my door. My heart pounded, and my hands shook as I held the blanket close to my face. Suddenly, the crying turned into loud screams, echoing through the whole house. I covered my ears, but the sound grew stronger, almost painful. My body froze with fear. I wanted to run, but my legs would not move. Then I saw it, a dark figure at the edge of my bed. It was tall, its shape unclear, almost like smoke forming a human body. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out of my mouth. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight, but in that very second, the figure vanished into thin air. Breathing heavily, I jumped out of bed and switched on every light in the room. The crying had stopped, the screams had vanished, and the house was silent again. But the silence now felt heavier, like the walls themselves were listening. I tried to stay strong, telling myself it was only a bad dream. But when I looked into the mirror, I noticed something chilling. Behind me, in the reflection, the shadow was still there, standing silently, as if waiting for me to notice. When I turned around, nothing was there. That was the moment I realized the house was not just haunted, it was playing with me. The spirit wanted me to see it, to feel it, and to fear it more every night. And it was succeeding. After nights of fear, I couldn't take it anymore. During the day, the house felt normal, but at night it became a nightmare. I decided I needed answers. Why was this happening? What was wrong with this place? I went to a small tea shop near the house and asked an old man if he knew anything about the property. His face changed immediately. He looked at me with worry and said softly, "You are staying there? You shouldn't be." My heart sank. He then told me the story. Many years ago, the house belonged to my boyfriend's grandfather, but something tragic happened inside. His younger sister had disappeared mysteriously one night. People searched for her everywhere, but she was never found. Some believed she died in the house, some said she was buried under it, and others whispered that she never left at all. After that, no one stayed there for long. Every tenant left within days, claiming to hear crying, to feel cold winds, and to see a dark figure near the windows. The locals believed the spirit of the missing girl still wandered the house, angry and alone. I listened, my heart beating fast. Everything the old man said matched what I had been experiencing: crying sounds, shadows, cold air, and the feeling of being watched. It was not my imagination. I was living in a cursed place. I went back to the house before evening, but my hands were trembling as I unlocked the door. The walls looked the same, but now I saw them differently. The smell of dust felt heavier, the silence sharper. It was as if the house knew I had learned its secret. That night, I sat on the bed holding my phone, afraid to turn off the light. I knew now that the crying belonged to someone who never left, and that someone might want me to stay with her, forever. That night, after learning the truth, I knew something terrible was going to happen. The house was no longer just a place to stay, it was a trap. I tried to stay calm, but fear made every second feel heavy. Around midnight, the crying began again. This time, it was not faint. It was loud, heartbreaking, and filled with anger. The sound echoed through every room, shaking the walls. My body trembled, but I forced myself to get up. I wanted to face whatever was haunting me. Slowly, I opened the door and stepped into the corridor. The air was freezing, and every light flickered as if about to go out. At the end of the hallway, I saw her. A pale figure of a girl, with long dark hair covering her face, stood silently. Her body looked broken, as if she had suffered great pain. She lifted her head, and though her eyes were empty, I felt her stare burning into me. Suddenly, the house shook. Doors slammed shut, windows banged loudly, and the air filled with screams and laughter together. My ears hurt and my chest felt heavy, but I couldn't move. The spirit walked closer, each step echoing like thunder. I tried to run, but the door to the outside would not open. My phone slipped from my hand, the screen cracked, and I was trapped. The girl's pale hand reached out toward me. At that moment, the lights went out completely. Everything was dark. I could only hear her breathing near my ear, cold and heavy. Then a whisper, "Stay with me forever." I screamed, but no one heard. The neighbors said later that the house was silent that night. Only I knew the truth: the house had taken me, just like it had taken her. And no one escapes once the spirit chooses you. What would you do if you were trapped in that house? If this story gave you chills, then just imagine the horrors waiting in the next one. Don't miss it. Hit subscribe now, turn on the bell icon, and join me for more terrifying stories every week. Your worst nightmares are just one click away.